UK-based Standard Chartered Bank has reached a settlement with the Competition Commission for colluding with 27 other banks to manipulate the rand's value against the US dollar. While Standard Chartered has come forward and paid a fine, a number of other local and international banks, including Absa, Standard Bank, Nedbank, Barclays, and Bank of America, are still under investigation. Good evening and welcome to Unfiltered. My name is Sizwe Mpofu-Walsh. Tonight on the show, we take a look at the manipulation of the rand. Who should be held accountable? How has this affected the economy and the lives of ordinary South Africans? And joining me for this conversation is the Competition Commission's Mohlala, Makwe Masilela, Director at Makwe Fund Managers, and on Zoom we have economic analyst Bongani Mahlangu. Before we get into tonight's conversation, government has vowed to ensure that there are consequences for banks that are responsible for the manipulation of the value of the rand against the US dollar. The Minister in the Presidency, Khumbudzo Ntshavheni, says this is tantamount to economic sabotage.
This is a demonstration that business has been active in wanting to destroy South Africa. Because when you manipulate the rand, you want the economy of the country to collapse, and that those businesses were not run by patriots. And it continues, and it's not unique to that period. There are things that business is doing now to undermine the economy and the standing of this country. And we're not saying there are no patriotic business people who are working with government to build and rebuild this country and the economy better. But what has been happening, specific to the rand manipulation, the Competition Commission has been engaging, because if you are following up, is it 28 banks and financial institutions that are at play, you need to have a solid case. So you need to then incentivize some to come and become state witnesses so that you can have evidence to prosecute the others. And the pace at which, if you recall, this was 2015, the time is taking, it shows the matter is complex. And they say they are confident now that they can take the matter to prosecution so that they can hold those who have not come forward to account and continue to deal with the penalties of the others.
Welcome back to Unfiltered, Mr. Mohlala. Thank you very much for joining us. You've been very close to this issue. Before we go anywhere, can we try and wrap our heads around what these banks are actually accused of having done in layman's terms, if that's possible?
Thank you, and good evening to you, and good evening to the viewers.
Evening.
In simple terms, you know, banks sell and buy money in the foreign exchange market, what they call forex market. So if you want to buy dollars, you have rands, you've got to approach the bank, give them your rands, and then they'll buy dollars for you. The same if you have dollars, you want to buy rands, you do the same thing. So they do that on their behalf as banks to raise their money, or they do that on behalf of clients that wants to buy goods in the international market, or they want to sell goods in the international market. So what they have done in simple terms is that they are fixing the price at which they buy or sell that money. So if you want to buy the dollars, they can come together and say, dollars today, let's through the trading, let's reduce the value of the dollar, or let's make the value of the dollar to go higher. So they manipulate it. The same with rand. If they want to buy rand cheaper, they can manipulate it so that it goes down and they buy it cheaper. So in simple terms, that is what they have done, and that constitutes price fixing in terms of the Competition Act. That is why the Competition Commission stepped in, investigated, and it's now prosecuting these banks for that conduct.
Mr. Masilela, can you deepen our understanding of this further? Of course, you also work in the industry with markets similar to this. How do we wrap our heads around what's happened here? Because it feels to me like there's this slogan of rand manipulation. Everyone's very angry about it, but exactly what it is may make people even more angry or less angry depending on exactly what the situation is.
I think what Mr. Mohlala just explained is so true, you know. They manipulate the rand to suit themselves. as he said, the difference between the buying and the selling price is the spread. So they will determine that today this is what we want, and now as they do that, obviously they're doing that to benefit themselves, because now if maybe the rand has to be devalued or maybe undervalued or maybe it has to be overpriced, then there's some commission that gets to be earned, and now there are some serious consequences on that. But for now, all their action that they've been doing was not to benefit anyone other than themselves. And unfortunately, our industry, we get nice bonuses and commissions as we generate more income. So if that was generating serious income for them, then definitely the guys were smiling all the way to the bank, not just as a financial institution when it comes to their earnings, but they themselves as particular traders, because traders get to be rewarded on how they trade and how much they manage to generate when it comes to trading. Remember, traders only earn money, or most of the money, by what we call brokerage, the commission that is coming out of that buying or selling.
Mr. Mahlangu, talk us through the economic impact of this. Of course, we've heard the stories, but how does this influence an economy, and what are some of the wider economic consequences of major banks internationally and locally being able to manipulate the currency, or at least the value of the currency, against the dollar in this way?
No, thanks for the opportunity. Before I even look into the economic impact of it, I just wanted to explain this, because usually the public tends to not understand it. So what we have in South Africa is what we call a free floating currency. So a free floating currency is traded or bought or sold just like any other commodity on the market, just like gold, just like platinum, and any other thing. So then its price is determined by market forces. So its price would be then determined by its demand and its supply. And then the people that would have been engaged in this manipulation are people that should be demanding and people that should be supplying. So then these people who would ordinarily be competitors, and their friction or interaction would determine the market price, decided not to do so. So they then decided to eliminate their risk and maximize their profits. And that is why then they would have contravened, I think, the Competition Act, Section 4 of the Act, subsection 1 of the Act. So when we get into the market or economic impact of it, I will use examples so it makes it easier to understand. Let's say then a foreign currency is depreciated. That means that then the imports becomes cheaper. And then let's say there's a domestic company here that is selling the same good that is now being imported cheaper. So this company in South Africa now finds it very difficult to compete with the foreign competitors. And then when this company in South Africa finds it difficult to compete with foreign competitors, what happens is that this company has to make decisions whether to retrench, because now it cannot achieve its budget or its target, financial target. It has to make decisions whether to contract, to reduce its capacity, to remain the same, because obviously it cannot expand. This company then cannot mobilize mobilize its revenue targets or generate its revenue targets. So this company now that means then it reduces its corporate investment tax, because of the fact that it won't be paying less because it's earning less. And then when that tax now is reduced, then you find that our government cannot now also generate or collect as much corporate tax that it used to. So then the government now cannot fully fund its mandate. And there are examples of that, kind of like now when the government has an overrun of about 30 billion rands, and one determinant or contributor to that budget overrun is because of under-collection. And under-collection that come from about 4...
No, indeed, and I think you've explained for us in interesting terms exactly how this affects firms, how the currency can affect different parts of the economy. I just wanted to ask Mr. Mohlala on that. Take us into the beginning of this whole process, which starts around about 2015, 2016, and exactly how you start to become aware that there is something going on here. I understand that there was a whistleblower within the industry. Take us into that incredible moment in our economic history.
Yeah, thank you. So in 2015, the Competition Commission was approached by Barclays, which then disclosed to the Commission that they have been involved in in a cartel with other banks. So the Commission has a corporate leniency policy. So in terms of that policy, any firm that is involved in a cartel comes forward first among the other cartelists and disclose the cartel. So they qualify to be given immunity from prosecution. And that firm will then help the Commission in the prosecution of others.
Sure.
So Barclays used that policy. They disclosed the cartel. They gave us all the information that was in their possession, including the actual charts. Then the Commission started the investigation, and indeed we found that this is what happened. We even uncover more banks that we included in our investigations. And then we then decided in 2017 to refer the matter to the competent tribunal for prosecution. So since then, the banks have been challenging the Commission. So they have not answered to the charges, to use that language,
Sure.
Against them. Instead, they have challenged the Commission firstly at the tribunal. They wanted the tribunal to dismiss the case against them. So they lost. They approached the Competition Appeal Court to say that their charges against them must be dismissed. They lost. In fact, Competition Appeal Court ordered the Commission to file a new charge sheet, so to speak. We did in 2020. Then the banks challenged it again, because we filed it again at the tribunal. They challenged it at the tribunal for the second time. And this year in March, the tribunal ruled that all of them must actually answer to the charges against them. And that ruling was really based on the evidence that we have put before the tribunal to say this is what happened, these are the charts, these are the communications. So there is a case for these banks to answer. But once again, they decided not to answer, to challenge that tribunal order to the Competent Appeal Court again. So last week, the Competent Appeal Court was hearing those challenges from the banks. And as they were hearing those challenges, Standard Chartered decided to actually settle. And I think we can get details about that.
Absolutely, and we will delve more deeply into that, but it's fascinating to hear the process and how long this has lasted. Mr. Masilela, how have markets reacted to this news, especially since Standard Chartered paid the administrative penalty? And what do you think the impact of this has been on financial markets as they relate to South Africa's economy?
It has been more of a muted reaction, and all because I think all these things have been baked, into the asset prices. And what has happened, I think markets have dealt with it before, that this is not new news to them. Sure. And up until maybe if the Commission, they become more serious, not in a negative way, Mr. Mohlala, that will come with some harsh and serious penalties, because now that will frighten people that we don't want to get involved. As we're talking today, is this moving the needle when it comes to markets? Absolutely not yet. It all depends how it unfolds going forward. But it's very interesting seeing people coming out. And I think before Standard & Chartered, Citibank as well came forward, made a settlement, And I think Standard & Chartered, this is not the first one. I think they attempted, then the Competition Commission said, no, that's too little. So, all this have always been into the market before it can even make all the noises out there. So we know they refused the first settlement, the second one. I think this is the third attempt that the guys ultimately accepted. But yeah, as it is, markets are definitely watching to see, that, hey, what is going to be the real penalty at the end of the day?
Absolutely, because we're only in the middle of the story at the moment. And Mr. Mahlangu, of course, and I will come back to Mr. Mohlala on this as well. There has been a lot of public debate about the sanction, the 42 million rand mark. I think the earlier sanction for the bank before that was 69 million, or in that ballpark. On the one hand, it seems like a drop in the ocean compared to what banks make. But on the other hand, I suppose the Commission is constrained in terms of its own legislation, in terms of what it can sanction. What do you think about how the sanction has unfolded in this administrative penalty?
All right, no, thanks. So basically, we know that the money that has been paid now, it's insignificant compared to the estimated total value of what would have been generated from these transactions. However, if you look at Standard Chartered, and the colleague from the Commission would articulate it better, it's not that.
Sorry, Mr. Mahlangu, we're just struggling to connect to you. But we will try to come back. I'm sure no banks are trying to influence the connection there. Mr. Mohlala, can I come to you? Because this question really is about the Commission. In some ways, I feel it's a little unfair for people to keep harping at you about the sanction, because you're constrained in terms of what you can do legislatively. Or are you? Could you have got more out of this settlement?
I mean, we are constrained, correct. I mean, the law, it's simple, it's easy, straightforward. We penalize firms based on their annual turnover in the Republic. So not globally, in the Republic. So Standard Chartered is a small bank in South Africa. I'm sure if I ask you how many branches of Standard Chartered you have seen yourself, you would not tell me, or you probably just say one in something. So it's a very small bank, and the penalty that they have agreed to pay, it's not small relative to their size in the country. I think what gets to be said, sometimes it's said because people don't have facts. But if they have facts, they would not say what they're saying. It's not a big bank in the Republic, and the penalty they paid is not small relative to their size. So, but most importantly for us as prosecutors is that we also need witnesses that are going to help us to successfully prosecute the remaining 23 banks that are not settling.
Sure. So 5 have kind of come on and are starting to cooperate, and you've got 23, and you need allies in order to get the information for the other members of the cartel.
Correct. I mean, it's a big cartel. 28, you already won over 5, so you are slowly dismantling the cartel. I mean, part of the reason why banks are not answering is because they are powerful. They have money. They can take us to court until perhaps our budget runs out. But if we manage to win some over, it should be understood strategically that we are weakening the cartel. And eventually the cartel will be dismantled. And once it's dismantled, we know that our currency cannot be subjected to manipulation. But for as long as we are fighting, the cartel shows that it's stronger. You don't know if they continue to operate, given that they can defend themselves. And I mean, it has been almost 8 years now since we've been fighting with banks over this cartel. And it doesn't look like it's going to finish anytime soon. We use public resources to prosecute this. They use their money.
They gained, by the way, in some of these trades.
Yes, so it's very important that we understand that.
Absolutely.
This is a fight between a small agency, so to speak, and a gigantic cartel.
Can I ask you, Mr. Masilela, just on that? Of course, you echoed the sentiment in a lot of society that these penalties really are insignificant relative to the size of the banks globally, of course. How do you respond to the way that the Commission is in some ways constrained, and the explanation they give for why they have decided the administrative penalty where it is?
I think, the Commission is right, but I think they should have learned. This is not the first case where we had people doing fixing. We had people fixing the price of bread. By then, they should have learned that we are constrained by X, Y, Z, and then hence people manage to pay the fine and get away with that. We all know people have the budget for that.
Let's leave it on that bombshell, and we'll come back to you, Mr. Masilela, to expand on that point. But let's take a break. We're discussing the manipulation of the rand against the US dollar following revelations of an administrative penalty paid by Standard Chartered Bank in a wide-ranging and long-standing case that the Competition Commission has brought against 28 local and international banks. When we come back, we'll delve further into the legal intricacies of this question. Stick with us. Welcome back to Unfiltered. Accusations of the manipulation of the rand have rocked South Africa's political landscape and economy, and tonight we're delving deep into the causes of this, the past events that have led us to this, and also what the future could hold for this case and indeed the South African economy. Mr. Masilela, before we went to the break, you were castigating the Commission for not learning earlier with some price fixing lessons. Do you want to round off that point? And then, Mr. Mohlala, of course, I'll allow you to respond.
Yes, we understand that there are some regulations, and then as a result, they'll only be able to impose a certain kind of fine. And I'm saying we've had this before, and I'm just talking about, say, bread as an example. We're not talking about the World Cup stuff, you know, when people were fixing stuff. And my point here is other industries, you know, if you do something, I mean, a medical doctor can be, they can take his or her license, they can be sued for stuff like that. Lawyers, they can be scrapped off the road. They can take my license if I don't do things right. And the banks themselves, they know they're just too big. And as a result, at the same time, as much as they've done damage by manipulating the rand, for the fact that they're holding deposits of ordinary consumers, you also don't want to close them down. But we have to come with something very harsh, maybe as an example, to say, listen, on top of the fine, probably now for the next 2 years or 12 months, all your forex transactions have to be done through another bank. That will reduce their fees that they should be earning because they have to share with another bank, and as a result, it affects their earnings. Shareholders won't be happy. If they're happy, then they will have to look into the executive management that you guys are not unlocking the necessary value for us as shareholders. Then probably they might be asked to step down. My point is, we all know, and it's not back home here only, even internationally, these companies, and it's not only banks, they've got a budget for this.
Mr. Mohlala?
Yeah, I think we've got to be fair to the Commission as well. I mean, the Commission is a creature of statute. As we said, it can only do what the statute says it can do. But following you see, if there's a problem with the law, it's not, the blame should not be at the Commission. It should be at the lawmakers. Because, or even the public, if they want the law to be changed, to be somehow the way they want it, they should do that. But following the bread cartel, the uncovering of the bread cartel, there was a public outcry about why directors are not going to jail. Then the law, following that, the law was changed, was amended to criminalize cartel behavior. So as we speak, cartel conduct in South Africa is criminalized. But that law came into effect in 2016. So the cartel we are dealing with here, according to the evidence we have, is that it ended in 2013. So you can't apply that law to this cartel unless you have evidence that it continued up to 2016. Then you can revoke the cartel provisions of the Competition Act. But at the moment, you can't, and you can't blame the Commission for that. Secondly, when a firm settle, because they settle with admission of liability, they say, yes, I've done this.
Sure.
So that gives anyone who is a public member or a corporation that has been negatively affected by that cartel a right to approach the tribunal to seek a certificate that they use to claim damages in the High Court. So it doesn't help to complain about the penalty that Commission imposed on Standard Chartered, but you are not doing anything to recover whatever you might have lost as a result of their behavior, whilst the Commission has put everything on the table for you. We've secured admission for you. You can take that admission, go to the High Court and say, I have been wronged up to this level. I am claiming I am claiming damages. And
Right.
of course, I expect people to do that, because that's where this complaint of theirs will be taken care of.
Sure. So this is it's not even the end of the road in the Commission's process, but there are various other mechanisms that could be used to hold the banks accountable.
Correct.
And in some ways, I think many people hear both Mr. Masilela's point and your point that how can it be so little? But on the other hand, we can't expect the Competition Commission to do everything that the state is supposed to do. And you've revealed this. The question for me is, what about other institutions in the state who should be watchdogs over this kind of behavior? One institution that comes to mind is the Reserve Bank, which is obviously mandated constitutionally to look after the value of the rand. I forget the exact phrasing of the phrase. Were they derelict in their duty here? To what extent is this about the SARB not noticing these kinds of things or issuing licenses without checking exactly who should be granted these licenses?
I think the Reserve Bank at some point they did their own commission when guys broke with their exchange controls regulations. So in this instance, and my understanding is that they themselves as the commission, at some point before they started, they spoke to the Reserve Bank. Reserve Bank cooperated, supplied them with whatever information they need. But this is the expertise of the commission, because as he said in his intro, Mr. Mohlala, that is more of price fixing, and we all know that that falls squarely into the competence of the commission. But I think we need to be careful, because here we are talking about the public which was not aware, and as a regulator, it's your responsibility to make sure that you protect people in the particular industry. Let's forget about this one, the banks. Why will a lawyer be stripped of the role? Because it's done X, Y, Z. All I'm trying to say is that other industries, they take very serious penalties, and we are saying for people not to do things. We're not saying we must make sure that things were done up until 2013, then we have to apply a law which only came into effect 2016. But things should be done in such a way that people have to think twice before they do something. These guys, they've got the budget. And it's all well and good to say Standard & Chartered, they generated X profit in South Africa. But those profits contributed to the overall group. Those profits contributed to the overall group. And who are the shareholders who benefited from those? Those are the shareholders who are holding shares at the group level. They got handsome dividends because the earnings were very decent. And yes, these are the things when I said we must learn, not in a negative way, to say that here I am, I'm an agency, but these are the rules and regulations governing me. But unfortunately, the way they're not making my job easy. So I don't know how laws and policies are made, but I'm just thinking that if I'm operating within a certain sector and they set those rules that make my life difficult, I think as an industry then, or as an agency, you've got the right to go out there, raise things that, for us to be more effective, maybe we need to look at X, Y, Z and explore stuff like that. And what they did after the bread cartel, it was a good thing. My point is more can still be done. And here we want to do things in such a way that people have to be scared. People will continue to be naughty and try to do things. Maybe people need to know back home, at home, that South Africa is a net importer. As a net importer, we all know that more things are sold in dollars. And if things are pricey as a net importer, that's inflationary in its nature. And when things are inflationary, the Reserve Bank will have all the reasons to increase interest rates. We all know the consequences of interest rates going up. Mr. Mahlangu said it very well, that it can even get to a point where people get to be retrenched. But other than that, just take oil itself. We import oil. If the rent has been manipulated and our petrol prices go up, we all know that almost everything that we do, Sizwe, is got a transport component in it. So all I'm trying to say is that you've got someone like Mr. Johnson or Mr. whoever sitting somewhere that got to be negatively affected because he's got a farm and the diesel price went up because the oil price that we imported was expensive. The very same guy who's sitting down there or who's running a small business somewhere in the Karoo, they don't know, they don't have the capacity to go out there and get, say, as Mr. Mohlala has enlightened us, to get the certificate and take it further. And I think that is good information that he shared with us. Those who can will be able to do
and
that.
Let me bring that back to Mr. Mohlala before I come to Mr. Mahlangu, who I believe is back with us. Where to from here legally? Because at the same time, this administrative penalty is just one pit stop in the larger journey towards even how you are expecting to hold these banks accountable. As I understand it, the next stage here would be some kind of trial in which at the end of that there would be further accountability steps.
Correct. So we are waiting for the Competition Appeal Court to decide on the appeals that they had last week, whether they are dismissing the charges against the banks or they are ordering them to answer to the charges. So if they are ordering them to answer to the charges and they don't appeal again, maybe to the Constitutional Court, then they must answer. So when they answer, then the whole process of prosecution starts. At the moment, it hasn't really started. We are fighting for that process to basically start.
And can I just ask, in terms of process, you would run a trial in terms of the competition tribunal. There's a special trial that would happen for that.
Yes, there will be. Once they answer,
sure.
Then all the process relating to trials start running, and then we have a trial date. That's when the trial will start, and that's when we'll hear everything. We'll put witness on the stand, examine them, cross-examine them. That's when the details, the juicy details, will come out. And that is what banks now are trying to avoid by refusing to answer. Instead, they challenging the charges against them. But at the end of the day, it will come to an end at some point.
Mr. Mahlangu, we've had a debate in the intervening period about the sanctions, which we started on. But we're now also moving towards the question of how other organs of state or institutions can play a role in accountability here, because of course the Commission itself can't do it all. Do you have any thoughts in terms of what can be done in other parts of the state to mitigate against the massive economic impact that this currency manipulation has had?
No, thanks for the question. To start here, the Competition Commission has its limitations, and those limitations would be provided by the Competition Act. The Competition Commission has provided leniency to 2 banks thus far, and I think it was even articulated earlier from the representative from the bank. So they would have used Section 49E of the Competition Act, which states that the Competition Commission must establish or draft a corporate leniency policy. And then from that policy, they would have then used Section 5, especially Section 5.5.2, 5.5.3, and 5.6, in order to provide leniency to the other two banks, especially the one that came after, which is Standard Chartered Bank. Because Standard Chartered Bank also, besides paying a fee, stated that they would stand and be a witness and testify against the other people that were part of the cartel. So that is invaluable. So as much as the amount may be insignificant, but what they plan to do beyond that amount will be very significant, will be highly valuable, and we can't discard that. And it's well within the existing legal framework. But regards to other institutions or organs of state, other organs of state with the evidence that will be even provided by your Standard Chartered, then it would activate other organs being your SAPS, Financial Crimes Unit, your SIUs, your FSCAs, your NPAs, and the South African Reserve Bank, on the basis that Section 224 was compromised by these banks, because the Reserve Bank has a responsibility to ensure that the value of the currency is not compromised according to Section 224 of the Constitution. So it was. So then that gives them also an element of which they can use in order to intervene in this matter. So then all these other agents must be active, and they also must be individual liability, where actual individuals get arrested, get prosecuted, not just a sanction against an institution, which is a juristic individual, which is the bank itself, but the people that actively participated in this behavior must also then come to the dock and also must plea. So yes, other state organs must play a role, including the government itself by means of legislature. Because if you look into our parliament, 2019, a question was asked by one opposition or organized political organization to Treasury and the minister that is responsible for Treasury. And the minister said there's no such thing taking place, and Treasury said there's no such thing taking place. But now the same government then comes and says that there was economic sabotage or alleged economic sabotage and so forth. And the same individuals or that are saying that part of the sixth administration were the people that were denying it in the fifth in transitioning to the sixth administration. So all of a sudden they've changed their tune. So now that we know that this thing has actually been happening, there are people that are willing, or an entity that is willing to testify, then the government also starts changing its tune and be more serious and ensure that they capacitate these other organs of state to ensure that there's prosecution and this matter does not get swept under the carpet.
Right, and we will ask our other panelists to respond to some of those provocations as we try to parse exactly how South Africa can hold the banking sector, international and local, which has been alleged to have been involved in cartel practices. We know that 5 banks have already come on board to assist the Commission in its quest to hold the larger group of 28 banks accountable. We'll be back after the break as we discuss currency manipulation and who's to blame for the way that the rand-dollar exchange rate was manipulated. Stay with us. Welcome back to Unfiltered. We're discussing the recent bombshell in terms of an administrative penalty paid by Standard Chartered concerning the manipulation of the rand and this ongoing case that's been rumbling on since 2015 involving 28 international and local banks. Before we continue with our discussion, let's take a look at what you have been saying on social media. And Mzuvukile says, the cost of living is continuing to be extremely high every day, and the culprits who are the root cause are getting a slap on the wrist. Those banks have caused big financial damage that cannot be fixed. They deserve to be prosecuted and be in orange overalls. In terms of the trial that could happen, Mr. Mohlala, would this be a criminal liability, or would this be more of a civil liability in terms of people having to pay back more money? And what are the chances of criminal liability in this case for individuals? So
it's going to be a civil litigation. It's not a criminal a trial. So unless in the process of discovery during the pre-trial processes, you uncover evidence that suggests that the currency manipulation went beyond 2016. Sure. Remember where we are now. Our evidence says it ended in 2013. So if we uncover more evidence that says it went beyond 2016, then the criminal provisions of the Competition Act comes in. They are triggered. But at the moment, they are not triggered, so we can't use them to prosecute this. We can only prosecute it in civil. So again, it's issue of information. Yeah. We can't do what the law is not saying we must do. Absolutely. What kind of cooperation have you got with other organs of state? Have you been in collaboration with any other organs of state, and do you feel like you're getting the full cooperation from the state that you need to pursue your work to the full? Yeah, look, I mean, so the commission investigates cartels, price fixing, market division, collusive tendering. So those, in most of the cases, they they don't trigger jurisdiction of other authorities. But there are certain conduct in certain sectors that triggers that. So when that happens, we are obliged to engage with those authorities and draw it to their attention of that. As to what they do with that, it's really not up to us. It's up to them, and I think it's fair that that question be asked to them, because we have brought this thing to their attention. They know about it.
Mr. Mahlangu, can I ask you a question as we go deeper into thinking about this? In terms of what it means for the South African economy, you know, we're told that there's this market which determines the rand-dollar exchange rate or any different kind of exchange rate. And then suddenly we hear that in actual fact, banks outside of South Africa are able to collude to set the price for themselves. So, I mean, who's in control here of the South African economy and the currency? You know, and what lies behind this market that we're told is allocating things efficiently?
No, thanks. I just wanted to first respond to what was said. See, what the Competition Commission here is now doing is just restrictive horizontal practice. So that is Section 4 of the Competition Act. But with that being said, it does not mean crime has not been committed in certain instances, but they will be limited to their act. And then other organizations of state will also use their act in order to check if certain things were done or not done. And then that's where they'll intervene. But with regards to the market, ideally, when we say the market, as I've put it in my opening remark, the expectation is that it's a simple demand and supply. And that interaction between demand and supply, those points where demand meets supply, would then determine the market price. But it is known that there are people that actually demand something and people that actually supply something. And at times, there are even bandwagon effects when people believe that they need something or people believe that they don't need something. So their feelings then come into play. And that is a variable that in most cases is undermined. So then the feeling can then create a bandwagon effect. For example, if I was in a market that sells bullets, and then I felt that there is some invasion of our country that might take place, and that might not be substantiated by anything tangible. And then I would demand bullets, for example. But that is just a feeling. And then I would convince other people to do the same, and the demand for bullets might actually go up, where it would trigger the price to go up if the supply cannot match that demand. So that is what normally happens. And what I said is that the currency of South Africa is treated like any other commodity, meaning it is subjected to market forces of demand and supply. So when a group sits
Sorry, we're just losing you there again, Mr. Mahlangu. We will bring you back in, but let me also come to Mr. Masilela, of course, because you're very close to market dynamics within South Africa. We hear that there's a market that you know is more wise than any one player within that market, but suddenly it sounds like, in actual fact, players can sit around a table and make the market look like it's doing something when it's actually being called to their tune. Is that something we should worry about more deeply in terms of the South African economy and who exactly is in control?
It's a harsh reality, but you should be worried. And it's not only in South Africa. Look what happened with the financial meltdown that we had, 2007, 2008. People telling people that these are the right things to buy, or to find that they are not, those are junk. And there was some serious collapse. What happened to those banks? They just paid fines. So it's not just a South African issue. Unfortunately, it's more of a capital markets problem that people get to a point driven by greed. Because as Mr. Mahlangu said, it's a supposite that things should be determined by the demand and supply, then you get the price. But greed kicks in, and as I said in my intro, you know, in the capital markets, traders get to be rewarded by the kind of brokerage commission that they're charging. So it's easy for them to be greedy. They get their nice bonuses, and also the companies continue to make money out of all that. So yes, it's just so unfortunate. It's just a harsh reality. And as we said earlier, it doesn't not just happen by the bread. I mean, what do you call it, the bread? We had the soccer issue, you know. So many things are happening, and I think Mr. Mohlala can also tell us that there are even other cases which are not in the public domain where the guys are investigating that on a mere tender people are doing funny things. Why? Because of greed. So in reality, market factors should be at play, but that is just a mere supposite. Greed kicks in. Hence, my point is that this greediness, we have to deal with that harshly, or else it will continue.
Mr. Mohlala, of course, feel free to respond to any of the debate that's unfolded, but also to move the conversation forward. I guess the worry in the minds of many South Africans is this just the tip of the iceberg? We got lucky in that there was a whistleblower who told us about this, but to what extent do you think that this is emblematic or representative of a deeper trend in terms of the South African currency? Are you, in your investigations, as more information comes to light, as you turn more banks towards your side, how deep does this go?
Yeah, well, at the moment, obviously the evidence we have, it takes us up to 2013. But let me say that cartels in South Africa have been rife. So there are many big cartels that we have dismantled as the Commission, and we continue to dismantle them, which is where I'm saying that, you know, at the very least we are bringing this onto the table for everybody to see and do what they can do with them. So remember, if we are not effective as the agency in our detection of this kind of behavior, you may not know about them. We may not know about them. The fact that we are able to uncover them, take them forward in the form of investigation and prosecution, and even secure settlements with the catalyst, it means that at the very least we are doing what we're supposed to be doing in terms of the law. And Mr. Mahlangu is right. I mean, it doesn't mean that if it's a contravening Competition Act, it doesn't contravene other statutes, like the criminal provisions of the Criminal Procedure Act, you know, the Forex Exchange Act. So, but, you know, it's always going to be whether you take the case forward or you don't. And I think when it comes to that, we should be judged on the basis of our track record. And our track record speaks for itself. Any bigger cartel that you can imagine of, we managed to uncover. You can talk bread, you can talk construction, you can talk 2010 World Cup Stadia, you can talk the automotive components, the car carriers, the banking. And we continue to uncover. He's quite right that there are other cases. Yes, there are other cases that we are investigating. And once we are at a point where we're satisfied, we will refer them and we'll make the announcements that we have referred them.
Can I ask you, Mr. Mohlala, on that? How much pressure is being brought to bear on the Commission? These are some very powerful institutions. I mean, it makes South Africa look insignificant when you look at the size of these banks. In fact, one wonders what bigger institutions there might be in the global economy. Are you experiencing intimidation? Are you experiencing pressure? Take us into what it's like to be targeting institutions of this magnitude.
Fortunately not. There's no intimidation. There is no interference with our work. There is no pressure. We doing our work as we're supposed to. And I suppose they understand that they can't interfere with the work of the Commission, because then you are contravening the law. So there's no pressure. I mean, the only pressure you have is that you've got to understand this thing. It's self-made pressure. You've got to understand it. You've got to get around it. You've got to resolve it. You've got to get to the bottom of it. You've got to know it, so that you are able to take it forward in the form of prosecution. So that is the pressure that we have. Is that, remember, we are not industry experts. We are not traders. And yet we've got to investigate and uncover the behavior of traders. All the things that they're doing, we've got to understand. All the code they are using when they're communicating, we've got to uncode them. So it's just the pressure of the work itself, but there's no external pressure in terms of, wanting to influence.
That's good to know. Yeah. I'm glad to hear that. Mr. Masilela? I see you disagreeing.
I think we need to be careful. You cannot praise a fish for swimming. That's their job. What they're doing currently, the US, they've done that. The UK, they've done that. And what I'm saying is that he's right. They're not experts in all this field, but there's always this thing that people collect intelligence. You don't have to be reactive all the time. And it was all well and good that the likes of Barclays approached them, but if Barclays didn't approach them, for instance, so where will it be today? And yes, you cannot uncover every little thing, but we have to get to a point for the fact that we know that the world is not as innocent as it looks out there. It means you have to be more proactive, try to find out, and you won't uncover every little thing. But what they're doing, we appreciate it. This is good, what they've done, the way they've done, changing the law, that they criminalize things since the bread thing. We appreciate all that, but we cannot praise a fish for swimming.
Right, and we will allow you to come back, Mr. Mohlala. We just need to run to a break, but the good news is we still have a whole segment to go. But in actual fact, I think we're going to run to some of the comments on social media, and then we'll allow you to come back in. So let's look at what Oscar on X says. Guys, let's be brutal and honest. Let the devils reverse their act in the next 12 months. First 6 months, Rand will be 15 Rand to the dollar, and last 6 months Rand 10 to the dollar. That stops all the discussion and SA benefits. Wow, that would be a dream world, Oscar, I suspect. Anything further from social media? I think that's our last comment for now. But I just wanted to thank you very much for an interesting conversation. There's a lot to unpack here. Mr. Mohlala, we have 30 seconds left, so we're going to give you a chance to just wrap up there, and then we're going to have to say goodnight.
Thank you. So I just wanted to say to Mr. Masilela that we are not saying he must praise us for doing our work. We are saying we are doing our work. So at the very least, he must acknowledge that we are doing our work, and then he must do something, because so far he has not been said what he's doing that is helping, but he has just been criticizing, and that's not helpful.
Thank you very much for joining us for a fascinating panel, bringing your insights from the different aspects of this question. Thank you for joining us on Unfiltered this evening. Let's continue to have this conversation at Unfiltered SABC. What are your thoughts on these allegations of currency manipulation? Did you learn anything new tonight about its origins? And where do we go from here as a nation? Thank you for joining us for another episode of Unfiltered News, Unfiltered Views, and Unfiltered Conversations. Have a good night.